Hi, I'm JD, and I'm going to talk about my COMP482 project. It's a website called Savr that allows users to save money on groceries. To do that, you can log into the app, scan items in using the barcode, and once they're in there, you'll see a clear indication of what the price of each item is. You'll allow the application to keep track of the history of the price over time, and you can even see the price compared to other similar products in the same unit, so that it's really easy to compare that pack of toilet paper with another one that has rolls that are a different size or something like that. It's a lot easier than standing in the aisle of a grocery store with a calculator while everybody's trying to social distance around you. Savr has a number of functions that can be performed, and I'm just going to walk through some of the basic functionality of the application. So the first thing, obviously, is getting logged in. After you have an account, you can log in, and that allows the database to keep track of all your items. Once you're in, you can create a new item, either by typing all the information in yourself and keeping track of things, but it's a lot easier if you can use the built-in barcode scanning functionality. Currently, barcodes are looked up using Superstore's API, and if Superstore has it, there's a pretty good chance the item will show up automatically. But at least for purposes of this initial prototype for my assignment, this should do okay. Additionally, you can also look items up on Superstore's website, and you can fill things in by pasting the URL. And if Superstore's ID is found inside the URL, which it should be, then the application will automatically go and fetch that data and fill it in for you. Once you've got the information for an item filled in, you'll see it in your list. You can tap on the name of the item to cross the item off your list, kind of showing that you're done with it for now, but you want to keep it there for reference. If you have several items that are in the same category, you can just tap the category heading and collapse the category temporarily so that you can focus on the other things you're interested in. By dragging the little grabbers at the sides of a category heading, you can also resort the items into a more useful order that maybe, for example, you want to sort things so that it matches the order in which you travel through the grocery store each time. Savr also has a few other web pages built in. There's a Contact Us page that allows you to send an email to the developer, that's me, or there's a page that allows you to get some instructions. And finally, once you're done with Savr, you can just log out of the app, and that way all your information, sessions, cookies, and all that stuff are gone, so that no one else can dig into your browser and see what grocery items you were looking at. As you can see, I'm in Mockups, which is a pretty cool web app for doing mock-ups of an interface. To begin with, I just started mocking up what different views of the app would look like in the order that people might use them. So here you've got the first run of the app, a little bit of information on the screen, and here's the menu showing some of the different options that there are. This is the main view showing what list items will look like in Savr, showing how you'd expand an item to see more information about the history of it. So the idea here is to make this very information dense so that a user can see a lot of information on a small device without having to do any sideways scrolling or anything. There's controls here to sort the items back and forth if a user wants to sort the items by price or maybe by the time they added the item. This is what the Add Item screen looked like when I mocked it up, and a similar screen that allows you to update items here, a page showing some instructions, and finally a contact form that allows people to email me. Initial view here looks quite a bit different than the mockups, and part of that is because I'm now supporting both dark and light themes. So for example, on the Mac, if you go into General, you can choose between dark and light. Windows and iOS and I think Android, they all kind of support a version of this. I felt that the green looked a little bit better. I'm actually using translucent green colors here so that they tint a little darker or lighter depending on the background. It works really well. Now, since this app has to work pretty well in a mobile mode, I wanted to keep the interface quite minimal. I didn't want a lot of clutter on the screen. I didn't want people being able to have tons and tons of stuff but have it not fit on a phone. And when you go in here, everything still fits, and it's a nice responsive design. If you change the size here, you'll notice a couple of things don't size super well. It was a little bit of a challenge trying to get things to fit on smaller devices. So especially something like an iPhone 5, a little bit cramped on there. But typical use cases work pretty well. There's a big prominent new item button. We wanted a big kind of call to action for one of the primary functions. I did put a lot of information into this form, and that could be a bit of a problem because it's just so much. It's a little bit overwhelming. But if you do use the scanning feature where you just copy the URL in, then it's pretty nice because things just show up automatically. So one potential optimization here is to focus more on the automatic scanning, maybe hide all this extra information until it's actually needed. Because you'll see that in a mobile phone, a lot of that information ends up off screen. You'll notice that update and delete are hidden inside this little menu. This is because these buttons should not be used super frequently, and I didn't want them cluttering up the main UI. It's a little confusing. Those images tend to show with the price information. So if we look at something like Shreddies here, you'll notice I've got a couple items in. You can see that we've got some of that extra information sort of hidden behind a fairly noticeable button. So we're hoping that people can see that button and just kind of try it out and realize very quickly what it does. I've also been able to pull in images from Superstore, and if you tap on the image, it makes it full screen, making it really easy to get a great view of your products. Potential consideration there is that those images might be pretty large if people are concerned about bandwidth, because nothing else about Savr really uses any bandwidth. You notice I've got some buttons here. They're kind of stuck at the top. Perhaps those could float, but my guess is that most people aren't going to change the sort order a lot. Here's a concern that came up in user testing. Just when you click an item twice, it's a pretty subtle difference. Just the shading changes a little bit, but you can flip the order. So you can toggle and sort by the name, or reverse sort by name, or by the price per unit. I've decided to use sort of a hamburger style menu button that just hides the menu items, because in this particular application, most of these aren't going to be used very regularly. And finally at the bottom, there's some buttons that are kind of just jammed there that are extra, like you can use this one to expand all the item detail if you want to go to town. It's just sort of a shortcut in case the user has a lot of these that they want to minimize and can just click one button to clean up their list. You'll notice also that I've got this extra new button. An issue that I discovered was that it might be a little confusing that we've got new item here, and we've also got new here. They're actually the same button that do the same thing, but when I started using this in real life on a phone, I realized that it's really difficult for your thumb to get all the way up here, and that button gets hidden when you scroll down a bit, so it was just super handy to add an extra item here, so then you can just scan your barcodes and move on. Okay, this is just a super quick note about the implementation technology used for Savr. So in a nutshell, it's a PHP database-driven web app. Here's the database schema. As you can see, we've got a number of tables here, one for users, a bunch of keywords to help the categories automatically get determined based on keywords that are returned from Superstore, and a list of items and other metadata about the items. This particular piece of code here, ssinfo, is actually what queries Superstore's API and makes a data structure, and a lot of code in here. This is a pretty heavy file. This is the JavaScript file that handles rendering all of the information. So all of that HTML is actually generated by JavaScript. There's a little bit of code at the beginning that handles keeping this in sync with the database through this variable I call sequence ID or seq ID. And here's the CSS that styles everything. Fairly modern CSS, use a little bit of animation, use some media queries to allow different elements to show up at different sizes easily. And this little bit of code I just wanted to point out is actually a third-party library that does all the barcode scanning. So I did not write that part myself, and it's really handy. It entirely works with JavaScript, so there are no images sent to a server anywhere, and it works very effectively, especially on fast new phones. For the final assignment of COMP482, I had to do an heuristic analysis of Savr. And to do that, basically what I did is got a list of all of the 10 criteria, the 10 heuristics that Jacob Nielsen came up with. So there are things like visibility of system status, match between system and real world, user control and freedom. And number one, I went through the application in a very normal way, as you would use it as a user, trying to pick through every feature, every possible point of failure, and every possible variation of UI, and looking for different problems and writing them down, classifying them under the heuristic that they applied to. Next, I assigned all those issues a severity, ranging from 0, meaning not a problem at all, up to 4, catastrophic issue. And once I went through the application, I could then focus specifically on each of those heuristics and look for other problems that are in that category. Like, for example, are there any areas where the system status is not visible? In early designs, I noticed that when you scanned a barcode, sometimes nothing would come back and you weren't sure if it finished and nothing was found or if it was broken or what. So I made sure to add system status messages saying, hey, there was nothing found, so there's no point in trying again. I basically found that there were a lot of areas that users found Savr was excessively complicated and that it does have a bit of a cluttered appearance, despite overall being fairly simple to use. There are certainly improvements that can be made to make this more usable, more clear and simple for users to do the most basic tasks. Perhaps some of the advanced functionality and all those extra fields should be hidden somewhere behind maybe like an advanced button or something like that. In a nutshell, this was a pretty cool process to go through designing an application and analyzing the usability of it and determining what, if any, improvements could be made for an application that I've created.